El Nuevo Sol, Televisión.
The stricter the ID law, the more it does have a tendency to negatively impact voter registration rates among racial and ethnic minorities, particularly with the Latino vote.
I think it's in order to prevent fraud, just so that no one could double count themselves, so you get an accurate count for the votes. Whoever's voting, you could only vote once.
I think if people have to show an ID to vote, it will cut down on fraud. And the reason I say that, and it's not always people trying to get the minorities not to vote. I know there was just a story recently in the newspapers about some county where there was a huge swell in Republican votes, and they did some checking, and some of them were clearly fraudulent. If you have to show an ID and it has to match, I think that will eliminate a portion of those people, because obviously if you have 5 different names you've registered under, you may not have 5 different IDs. I think it really depends on the education, and it depends on the specific law.
I think that they need to show IDs in order to prevent fraud, because I believe that they are reinforcing it, because they might doubt that same person could go twice and vote for the same person, which would increase their options, to win.
The problem is if you paint it with too broad of a stroke and say, oh no, you must have ID, we're only going to accept this, then you're going to be disenfranchising certain voters, and you don't want to do that either.
It's not only going to impact racial and ethnic minorities, in particular Latino vote, but it will also, or voter turnout, but it will also disproportionately impact the youth and the poor as well. So there are other segments of the population that these voter ID laws will impact.
They're really of most concern to us are those that are now requiring a government-issued photo ID essentially from every voter without any exceptions, or with only very narrow exceptions. Leading up to this election, we're doing as much as we can to make sure that people know what the ID laws are in their states. They're also going ahead with their sort of publicity campaign to tell people about how they can get a free ID for future voting. So we're doing a lot of work in communities. So we staff the nation's only bilingual hotline for voter assistance and information. It's 888-BEI-VOTA. We also have a companion website to the hotline, which is www.yaesora.info.